1,000, accompanied by the even more improbable number of 3,000 war elephants. In reality, the size of the Indian force was around 100,000 men and 300 elephants.
Oh! Was supposed to do this one a bit ago, bro. I have so much suggestions. Like, you people are bombarding me with so much suggestions, and I try to upload at least once per day. But I remember this one at least, okay? So, there is that.
Muhammad of Ghor is being chased by the army of Prithvi Raj Chauhan. The lightning charge of the Rajputs took the Ghurids completely off guard during their first encounter on the fields of Tarain. And it was only because of their
We're gonna fix that real quick.
that the Ghurids
There we go.
escape
Much better.
unscathed from the battlefield. The defeated Sultan was forced to abandon the fort of Bathinda and its defenders to their fate, and retreated back to his realm to lick his wounds. But he would soon return. If you like the animations on our channel, make sure to check out Jake Bartlett's classes, Beginner's Guide to After Effects, and Animate with...
Oh, scare. Ugh.
Immediately after their victory over the Ghurids, the Rajputs besieged Bathinda. But lacking proper siege equipment, they were forced to adopt an attritional approach and attempted to starve out the defenders. Prithvi Raj did not assume direct command of the siege, but left one of his generals in charge and returned to Ajmer.
Dude, if there's anything that I want to learn about, because a lot of history that I've been learning or that I know of is so Eurocentric, I need to learn about the Indian subcontinent, and more of the Middle East and their time periods. I gotta like find books and read about that, because it's honestly criminal how, like, you know, there's a bunch of European history from each time period that I know relatively okay, where I could kind of like say, okay, this happened, then that happened, then that happened, cool. But I can't really say that for like most of the other countries. I'm like, oh no, that's so bad. I'm like missing out on like so much information, man.
Back in his domains, Muhammad of Ghor was outraged at his failure. He took an oath to refrain from all luxury and set himself to avenge his defeat. He publicly disgraced all of his generals and captains who showed cowardice at Tarain, and single-mindedly began to rebuild and reorganize his army in the ensuing months, raising a new force of Tajiks, Afghans and Turks, and putting an even greater emphasis on firepower, mobility, training and discipline. Meanwhile, Prithvi Raj was elated with his victory over the Turkic nomadic army and complacently assumed that his forces had definitively demonstrated their superiority. While the Indian king was reportedly spending his time in marital bliss, the only measures that he took in order to prepare for the impending clash was to secure several alliances with neighboring kingdoms so that he could be able to field an even greater army. The Rajput ruler, from his residence at Ajmer, dispatched two of his prominent generals to other operational theaters and took no further significant measures. For example, he did not set up early warning systems near his borders, nor did he strengthen his frontier defenses. Instead, a large portion of the Rajput army was left outside the walls of Bathinda, which they continuously besieged for over 12 months, eventually capturing it when the garrison's food and water supplies ran out. All the while, Muhammad of Ghor had been fervently preparing to re-invade northern India, and his dedication eventually paid off. Around summer of 1192 BC, the Sultan was ready to march out with a force of some 52,000 cavalry, which was nearly half of the entire army of the Ghurid Empire.
That is, wow. And that's cavalry, bro. 50, yo, woo!
The remaining troops were behind in the heartland to guard the realm against
quite a bit. 52,000 cavalry. Bro, where do you get 50,000 horses from? That's like Napoleon's wet dream. Because a lot of his tactics were literally based around cavalry.
When Muhammad reached the city of Peshawar, he had the wisdom of pardoning his recently dismissed captains and summoned them to join his campaign. The fast-moving mounted army descended upon the unsuspecting garrison of Bathinda, and they were able to recapture the fort only a few weeks after it had been occupied by Indian troops. Thus, the whole progress of Prithvi Raj's army had been reversed within a few days, and the strategic situation looked eerily similar to that of the previous year. From his base at Bathinda, Muhammad now sent a letter to Prithvi Raj demanding his submission and requiring to accept his sovereignty. Predictably, these demands were refused.
Your father knows about.
Alerted by
I like this music.
Prithvi Raj
This music is
to mobilize his troops and prepare to meet
wow.
But
This music
his newly
is.
formed alliances, the number of men that he was
I would literally
concentrate
bop to this music right now, but I'm too busy watching this.
Earlier in the year, he had sent a few of his prominent generals to campaign elsewhere. The sources attest a presumably exaggerated number of men for the Indian army of about 300,000, accompanied by the even more improbable number of 3,000 war elephants. In reality, the size of the Indian force was around 100,000 men and 300 elephants.
Oh! Oh! Whoa! 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 Uh-oh. Bro, you know what 100,000 men is, bro? To give you an idea of how much that is, bro. To put that into perspective, the population of Barbados is 280,000 people. That's almost one-third. One-third of the entire population of.
In late 1192, Muhammad of Ghor and Prithvi Raj.
That is insane, bro.
Following almost the exact same route of the previous year's campaign. They met at the exact same spot, in the fields of Tarain. On the eve of battle, the confident Rajput leader sent a letter to the Ghurid Sultan that read, "You know the bravery of our soldiers, and you can count our great superiority in numbers. Even if you are tired of life, have pity on your men who might still think of a pleasant thing to continue living. We will allow you to retreat safely, but if you are hell-bent on seeking your evil fate, we are sworn by our gods to advance upon you with our rank-breaking elephants, our trampling horses, and our bloodthirsty soldiers, and destroy the army that you are leading into ruin." Muhammad of Ghor was not intimidated by this rhetoric, but on the other hand, he was.
Yeah, it's not as cold as Timur or like the Mongols, bro. That not really cold. I didn't really get like a chilling, like hype feeling from that one there.
Was a commander fairly familiar with the concept of war as being a form of deception. Subsequently, the Sultan decided to play a cunning trick on Prithvi Raj and pretended to be daunted by his display of force. He seemingly agreed to a peace offer and sent a reply informing the Rajputs that he would withdraw as long as he would be allowed to retain Bathinda and Multan, but first he would need to acquire the consent of his elder brother, who was the co-ruler of his realm. All the while, he continued his preparations and reconnoitered the Rajput positions in order to assess the enemy state. The ruse was successful, and Muhammad's pacifying tone lulled Prithvi Raj into a false sense of security. During the following night, the Ghurid army left their camp in secret, and before dawn they had taken up positions near Prithvi Raj's camp. Just before the crack of dawn, while the Rajputs were being totally oblivious to the events that were unfolding around them, the Turkic cavalry attacked. Unaccustomed to such kind of warfare due to their military ethos that forbade night attacks, the Rajputs had few to no sentries posted that could warn the rest of the army. They were literally caught in their sleep.
Oh, wow.
Cavalry wreaked havoc and inflicted heavy casualties on the Rajputs, who were
Always. Dude, if you have watched me react to so much of this stuff, I always say it's always when they get caught sleeping, when they get caught eating, or in some cases, when they get caught praying, or like celebrating some holy, traditional, depending on the culture, what. Always.
Their initial shock. Soon, the Rajput heavy cavalry countercharged and were able to repulse the Turkic horsemen, but not before the Turks have managed to neutralize a great number of war elephants.
Not the elephants.
The Rajputs spent some time to redress their ranks and recover from the chaos
Those
of the
elephants.
engagement.
Those elephants are literally the reason why Timur won.
After the Ghurid army, which was already deployed on the plains nearby in battle formation. Muhammad of Ghor had arrayed his army in a specifically designed way that maximized the mobility and swiftness of his cavalry. He divided up his horsemen into 5 divisions. 4 of these were made up of about 10,000 light cavalry each. Behind his main line was the Ghurid Final Reserve that was made up of about 12,000 elite and heavily armed Ghulam lancers. On the other side of the field, the large Rajput army arrayed in its traditional linear formation, with elephants positioned in front of the main line. Even though Prithvi Raj had a numerical advantage of almost 2-1, his army was far from cohesive, being a conglomeration of 100 different chiefs subordinate to the Indian leader. Once again, the battle was initiated by Muhammad, who sent 2 of his divisions to attack the Rajput left flank. The retrained Turkic horse archers advanced toward the Indian flank and, once in range, they unleashed a devastating volley of arrows with
Mongol tactics.
Composite bows.
Mongol tactics. Ooh.
The Indian...
Bro, imagine... Oh, dude. That is so awful. Like... It's like literally standing there and getting shot at with bullets. Except... like... it's arrows. Like, at least with bullets you can take cover, but in this period of time you literally have to stay in form. Oh, bro, I swear, how is this tactic not broken? Like, this tactic was too broken. Actually, isn't that why the Mongols like were able to expand like super quickly? Because their horse archers were just whew, too much.
Responded by chasing after their assailants, but as they were closing in, the light horse archers broke the
of course, and they're gonna retreat
while firing their arrows, by turning their bodies 180 degrees.
Yep.
A maneuver that closely resembled the famous Parthian shot. Ghurid implementation of these novel tactics meant that the Rajputs were unable to repeat the deeds of the previous year. Wary of overextending their lines, Prithvi Raj's men soon abandoned the chase, being incapable of catching up with the agile Turkic cavalry. Muhammad now ordered his other 2 divisions to attack the Indian right flank in the same way. The exact same sequence of events followed, with the Ghurids unleashing their volleys and the Rajputs attempting to engage in close combat. But, try as hard as they might, the Indians were unable to pin down the fast-moving horsemen. The fighting dragged on over the course of the entire day, with the Rajputs growing increasingly frustrated due to their mounting casualties and their incapability of inflicting any sort of damage to their enemies.
This is so unfair. This is why I said this is literally like being shot at with guns, but you this is actually worse than that. Oh my gosh. Like, this is...
On the other side, Muhammad was also
a tactic ahead of its time.
Because even though his army had caused heavy attrition to the Rajput ranks, they were actually running out of arrows.
Of course, I was just about to point that out.
Late in the day, and after hours of fighting, the demoralized and less reliable forces of the Indian army began to individually desert the battlefield.
Wow.
When Muhammad observed this, he ordered all 4 of his horse archer divisions to abandon their skirmishing tactics and engage both wings of the enemy in order to pin them down. Soon both armies were locked in a lethal close quarters combat, with Prithvi Raj's men being especially enthusiastic as they could finally get at their tormentors. As the...
Bad idea to charge them. Honestly, he could have just gotten away with just shooting the missiles at them.
Desperate fighting continued. Prithvi Raj drew some troops away from his center in order to reinforce his heavily pressed flanks. This was the moment that Muhammad had been waiting for. He ordered his final reserve, the elite 12,000 heavily armored Ghulam Lancers, to attack the enemy's weakened center. They soon smashed into the Rajput ranks with great momentum. Slashing about with their swords, they simply mowed down everyone in their path.
Wow.
Not long after,
slaughterhouse
through the thinly stretched enemy center and swung around, attacking the heavily engaged Rajput wings from their flanks and rear.
What a one-sided battle. Like, wow, what a one-sided
battered troops disintegrated in...
Didn't the Indians outnumber them too, if I'm not wrong? Like, they were... The Indians had 100,000 men, right? And they had the Muslims had 53,000, if I'm not mixing that up. Like, wow, that is even more sad.
Ghurid onslaught. Others fled for their lives, while those who were dedicated to the Rajput code of military conduct stood their ground and fought to the death. It wasn't long before Prithvi Raj himself was captured and summarily executed.
Ooh, wow.
The number of men lost during this fateful day isn't known, but it is obvious that most of the Ghurid casualties were inflicted during the close quarters fighting stage of the battle. The Rajputs, on the other hand, were utterly devastated. Most of the army was either captured or killed. After his victory at the Second Battle of Tarain, Muhammad of Ghor captured Prithvi Raj's entire domain with relative ease. Shortly afterwards came the turn of the Gahadavalas, who stood in the way of the triumphant Ghurids. They also shared the same fate as Prithvi Raj's kingdom, after they were defeated in battle in 1194. The rampaging Ghurid Sultan was eventually able to overrun the entire Gangetic plain in less than a decade, reaching as far as Bengal. The Second Battle of Tarain was a decisive one, because even though the Ghurid Empire was short-lived, its victory over the northern Rajput kingdoms established a permanent Muslim presence and influence in the Indian subcontinent.
So So Islam was foreign to India. Interesting. What was I gonna say? So how do Indians feel about this? How do Indians feel about this? I would love to know. I don't know if I have Indians on my channel. I know I have a lot of Muslim people on my channel, but if I do have Indians, how do you feel about that? About the whole like Islam and its influence and its origins and how it came to India? I would love to know. Because I always like to cry about the British Empire, but you know, I would really love to know, like, how does India feel about the Muslim presence in India? Like how do they view that? Do they view it in any bad light, like they do with the British Empire, or like?
And as a consequence of this conquest, an Islamic dynasty would rule from Delhi for almost a century. Special thanks to our friend Hawk S. Bellum for
Very excellent video. If you made it all the way here, make sure you subscribe and you like. If you got any suggestions, just comment it down below. As always, thank you for watching and goodbye.